what are some of your memories of images that you used to have of the former Yugoslavia, or maybe that you have impressions of the countries now?
So I was really full of interest of former Yugoslavia countries since when I was 15. I remember, so everything started, of course, during the Civil War. We were organizing in my hometown, Padova, where I grew up, assembly with students and movements to understand what was going on in former Yugoslavian countries. And actually my activism as social communicator, I would say, and as director started with an organization called Italian Consortium of Solidarity, traveling with them to Bosnia, to Serbia, to Kosovo, to Macedonia, and I was traveling all around Balkan countries, former Yugoslavian countries for, let's say, 10, 15 years. So I had a lot of experiences in all the main countries and cities, and it's for me it's a place where I really grew up and where I understood a lot of things in my life. And everything happened during the end of 90s and beginning of 0 years. And understanding how was going on the large split of my life and life of my friends in Balkan countries has played a large role in make me understanding how we were building the so-called European fortress. And so I have really a lot to thank to my experiences in Balkan countries in order to understand what was going on in my life, not only the life of my friends to the other side of the border. And so nowadays, going back to these areas, because then I started to travel in Africa, and I developed a lot of projects about migration across the Mediterranean route. Then when I decided to work on this project 3 years ago, I came back to this border, to this area, and I had the opportunity to work with other kind of migrants coming from more east, but I felt that I was somehow coming back to my roots, and I felt that I was coming back to the point of 20 years ago when we started to build our Western fortress, keeping out of the fortress the others, and now we are using the others, so the Balkan countries, in order to protect our fortress. So this personal story, these private stories, has a lot to do with the development of our common stories, and this film is somehow a point where I meet again this process through the stories of other people coming from more distant countries, eastern countries, but everything has to do with this relation of the protection of our fortress and the relation with the countries which are around our fortress.
That's a very extensive explanation. It actually answers a few points that I wanted to make. So obviously now, like you said, we've moved the border from Trieste down now towards Croatia, which is in Schengen. And a lot of people I know in Croatia sort of say, oh, well, why are these refugees? Why do they want to go into the center of Europe? Why don't they stay in countries that are more similar to them, and so on? What would you say, so from developing this film, what are the reasons for this? Obviously, it's not just, I want better benefits. Why would you risk your life to go further?
Because you don't have other ways to travel. That is the main point. So, of course, no Pakistan citizens would start to walk for 15,000 kilometers crossing deserts, seas, forests, and the violences of different kind of policies, if they would have another opportunity to travel. That is very simple. So they don't want to cross this route, and most of them, they have clear project of their travel. So they have friends, relatives, connections somewhere, and they want to reach that point. But no one asked them what they want. They are the migrants. If you become a migrant and you are no more, what's your name? Ramona. So now you are Ramona. Huh?
Yeah.
If you become a migrant, you are no more Ramona. Huh? So you don't have friends, you don't have wishes, you don't have desires, you don't have projects, you don't have roots. You are simply a passive object of a geopolitical strategy. And you have to find your place in this position. So you are a number trying to obtain the entrance somewhere. But there are no connection with your personal, individuals, projects and
the
wishes.
Humanity.
Yeah?
Yes.
And so we are going on transforming people in passive numbers. Huh?
Yeah.
And this is the main problem why we are not finding a solution. Because this chaos is going on since 25 years, and the situation is worse and worse. We don't find solutions. We put a lot of money in fighting against. Okay,
Yeah.
we convince our public arena, our public opinion, that fighting against them, we are defending our identities. We are building political powers around this issue, because it's the main issue of all the political electoral campaign. I don't know in Croatia, but I think it has a power also there, and it will grow in the next years, because now we are part of the defending the patriots. Okay, but we received a lot of money in the last years to improve your capacity of defending from enemies who don't have names, but
Yes.
are passive quantities of people trying to invade us. And we will go on in this way, I don't know until when, if we don't transform this point of view. If we don't find a way to ask Ramona, what do you want? If we don't give to Ramona the possibility to be free to go where he wants or she wants. And so someone could answer to me, okay, you are crazy, you are speaking about freedom of movement of everyone, and then we have all the world coming to us, and we will be destroyed. Okay, that is the consequence they have in mind when you speak about that. The answer is very simply, when we transform migrants, passive migrants, in human beings with wishes and projects, they disappear. They are no more a problem. That happened with Slovenian, Croatian, Albanian, was the main problem of our 90s. When I was a student, the problems were coming from former Yugoslavian countries. Okay, all the Croatian, all the Romanian, all the Albanian, all the Serbian, they were all enemies, bringing to us big problems and creating an incredible invasion of other and so on.
The Balkan invasion.
Now they disappeared. Why you disappeared? Because you have the freedom of movement. Okay, and so building freedom of movement, giving to human beings the possibilities to be individuals following their wishes, build a more safe space for all of us and them together.
Absolutely. I would just maybe like to ask, so what do you think the reasons for making this film was? Was it to give the refugees a voice? Was it maybe to prove a point with people who say, oh, we don't need refugees, they're so dangerous? Or was it maybe to show that this is now the reality of our society, just like you were saying, and that the sooner we accept that this is what our world looks like now?
The main goal of this film is to make people understand what are the pushing back operations our policies are dealing with. Because the public opinion doesn't know what does it mean to build these pushing back operations, what they are, what are the consequences for human beings involved or victims of these operations. And we don't know that inside our institutions there is a big debate, a big conflict if these operations are legal or not.
Yeah.
And it's not a question, it's not a humanitarian question, it's a very deep structural question. Because in our film we show how a part of our institutional system, the jurisdictional, not juridic one, the law system, so the judge, consider this operation deeply illegal from a national and international constitutional point of view. A ministry, to the other side, consider this operation legal. So it means that two big political structure of our system are in conflict in front of this kind of operation. So this film is about our crisis. It's not about the poor people trying to reach the new El Dorado. Okay, that is the classical stereotypical way of looking these stories. No, the drama of poor people trying to reach a better life.
Sort of a reporter's way.
No, it's not that. The point is we are facing a big crisis, and it's a crisis structurally internal to our system, to our way of having a relation with the law. The law is valid for all the human beings, or we are building an ethnical new system and order.
Thank you. All right, one last question. This, we could go on forever. I could just listen to you for a really... so I'm just going to ask another controversial maybe question. So we've seen this crisis, if we want to call it that, of refugees for the past 10, 15 years in the news. And then last year, we have another influx of refugees from Ukraine, which has been portrayed in a completely different way, perhaps, in the news.
Yeah.
How would you comment on that? What's going on here?
It's very simple to comment that. So there is a war. We are with a part of this war, and we are fighting, not directly, but we are giving weapons in this war. And so we are part of a big conflict, and the refugees of the right side are our friends. The other refugees, we don't know where they, because there are also Russian refugees, of course, but they are fleeing to the other side. And all the other refugees which are not connected with our interests are not considered in the same way. So Pakistan refugees or Syrian refugees,
but there are wars fought there, and they should be on our side because we're fighting against the negative influences within their countries.
But we are,
right?
we are not fighting anymore in Afghan, for instance. We are friends of the Pakistan regime. We decided to be friends with Turkish and Syrian regime. We are controlling the Iraq regime. We are friends with all the regime of Northern African countries in order to ask them the help to stop migrants. And so, of course, we will not
okay, so they are not our concern.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so not to end on a downer, what is the way? How do we build compassion, understanding, acceptance? Not just with what we call refugees, people. What do we do?
The the necessary step is to transform people in human beings, and so to consider stories and to have to do with the individuals. And I think cinema can play a role in this, because when you fall in love with someone watching the film, it means that this one became a friend of you. Okay,
Absolutely.
that you understand why he's crying or smiling, and you feel that you are connected with him somehow magically. And I think that making stories for cinema, also about so-called migrants or refugees, help to transform these people in human beings and to listen to them and to consider which is your relation with these kind of stories.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.